The wind howled like wolves across the empty desert, dragging sand across the body of a man who looked more ghost than human. Luke Carter. Once a proud cowboy, now lay barely breathing beneath a torn saddle and a dying horse. 3 days earlier, he had been ambushed by black-coat riders, men hired to hunt him like an animal. Shot in the shoulder, robbed of water, and chased into Apache territory. He had held on only through stubborn will, but now his lips were cracked, his hands numb, and his mind fading like a candle dying in the night. Through the blur of sand and pain, he heard something. At first, he thought it was the whisper of death calling him, but then he saw 2 shadows approach, moving like spirits through the dusk. 2 Apache sisters, Ayana and Nayeli, dressed in deerskin hunting clothes. Bows drawn, eyes sharp like hawks searching for prey. They had been tracking deer, but instead stumbled upon a half-dead foreigner. Luke tried to speak, but only a rasp escaped. His breath was white vapor in the freezing night. He forced himself up, trembling, trying to show he was no threat. His fingers slipped and he collapsed again. The sisters exchanged a look, one of caution, one of concern. "He is freezing," Ayana murmured, touching his cheek, feeling how cold he had become. "He will die before moonrise," Nayeli replied, her voice firmer. "Spirit law forbids letting life fade without reason. We take him." Before Luke could protest or even understand, their hands grabbed him beneath the arms, dragging him across frozen sand toward a hidden canyon. His vision flickered in and out. He saw the outline of cliffs, the glow of a small fire, silhouettes of wolves watching from afar. He thought he heard their voices chanting as he slipped toward unconsciousness. He awoke later wrapped in buffalo hide, trembling so violently he thought his bones might break. He tried to sit up, to mutter that he was fine, that he didn't need help, that a cowboy stands alone. But both sisters were beside him, warmth radiating from their bodies. "Shut up, cowboy!" Ayana snapped, pushing him back down gently. "You're freezing." Nayeli lifted part of the blanket, commanding without hesitation. "You're sleeping between us tonight. If you do not take our heat, you will not live until dawn." And so, shivering under a sky full of stars, Luke Carter lay between 2 strangers, realizing that fate had placed him not at death's door, but at the beginning of something he could not yet name. Morning crept into the canyon slowly, painting the rocks gold. Luke's eyes opened to the sound of distant drums and whispers carried by the wind. His head throbbed, but his body felt warm for the first time in days. As he sat up, the blanket slipped off, and he felt dozens of eyes burning holes into him. Apache warriors stood in a circle around the small cave where he had slept. Spears pointed, bows drawn. He swallowed as though the desert itself sat in his throat. He knew in an instant that he was not welcome. The tallest figure stepped forward, a man with long black braids and a necklace of eagle bones. His stare was hard, carved from stone and war. This was Black Eagle, the chief. His voice was heavy with authority. "This man's people took our land," he said in Apache tongue. Though Luke understood enough to know the meaning, why protect him? Why waste breath on a snake? Ayana moved in front of Luke, shoulders squared, her face unflinching. "He was dying," she said firmly. "Spirit law forbids letting life fade without reason. We did what honor demanded." Nayeli joined her sister, eyes blazing not with fear but conviction. "If we let him die, our ancestors would curse us. A soul is sacred, even a stranger's," the warriors murmured, anger mixing with uncertainty. Luke forced himself to stand, despite the pain stabbing his shoulder. He raised empty hands, showing he carried no weapon. "I never wanted to harm anyone," he said weakly, voice shaking not from fear but exhaustion. "I ran because they wanted to kill me. I came here only because I had nowhere else to go." Black Eagle's sharp gaze narrowed. "Killers?" he asked. Luke nodded slowly. "Men in black coats. Hunters, government men. Paid to chase me. They burned a ranch. They didn't care who lived or died." His voice broke for a moment, remembering screams, smoke, flames climbing the sky like demonic hands. Ayana looked toward Nayeli, realization dawning. Those same black-coat riders had raided an Apache camp moons ago. They had taken children. They had taken the sister's brother. Luke saw their faces change, pain flickering like lightning before a storm. Black Eagle spoke again, softer but still edged like steel. So the enemy of our enemy bleeds at our feet. There was a long silence. The wind itself seemed to pause. Luke felt his fate hanging like a feather in air. Life on one side, death on the other. And then, for the first time since he arrived, he felt something shift. He was no longer just a stranger. He was a question. He was a possibility. He was a man whose story was not yet finished. The following days moved like the slow drift of river water, carrying Luke Carter into a world he had never imagined. At first, he lay inside a woven hide shelter, drifting in and out of sleep. But soon he began to notice the life around him. Children practicing with tiny bows, elders whispering prayers to the morning sun, and women painting intricate symbols on the canyon walls. The Apache village was hidden from the world, carved between cliffs where only spirits and shadows could witness their existence. As Luke healed, the tribe kept their distance, suspicious eyes following him everywhere he went. But Ayanna and Nayeli stayed close, watching him like hawks, like guardians, or perhaps like two people, trying to understand why fate had placed this cowboy in their hands. One evening, Ayanna led him to the river that ran through the canyon. She knelt beside the water and showed him how to cup his hands to drink, how to listen to the sound of the earth breathing beneath his feet. She spoke softly, her voice almost blending with wind. "The land is not something you stand on," she said. "It is something that stands with you." Luke didn't know how to respond, but he felt something stir inside, a quiet he hadn't known since childhood. Another time, Nayeli took him into the forested slope above the canyon. She taught him how to track deer, how to read prints in the dirt, how to watch the wind before drawing a bow. When he failed and snapped a dry twig, scaring away a rabbit they'd stalked, she didn't mock him. She laughed, a sound that carried warmth in the cold mountain air. And Luke realized he hadn't heard laughter, not even his own, in a very long time. Some nights, when smoke from the campfire swirled upward like prayers rising to the moon, Luke sat alone and wondered why they saved him. He finally asked under a red sunset, when both sisters sat beside him, braiding string for traps, "Why risk your tribe for me?" His voice trembled because it carried more than curiosity. It carried fear that he didn't deserve the answer. Nayeli stopped braiding. Her eyes darkened, shadows of pain flickering through them, like a storm barely held back. "Our brother," she said. Just 2 words, but they carried the weight of grief. "He was taken when riders like those who chased you came. We were too late." Ayanna's voice joined, softer yet sharp. "When we found you, we vowed not to fail again." Luke felt the truth pierce deeper than any bullet. Maybe he was not saved because he mattered, but because he was a second chance. In that moment, as he looked at their hands working side by side, he understood something without needing it explained. His life was now tied to theirs. Whether he wanted it or not, destiny had braided their fates together, just like the cords between Nayeli's fingers. Dawn arrived not with peace, but with the rumble of hoofbeats rolling across the canyon like thunder trapped. Beneath the earth, Luke woke to frantic shouts, the shrill cries of war horns, and the distant echo of rifles being cocked. Smoke from the morning fires curled into the pale sky as Apache warriors rushed to the cliff's edge, scanning the horizon. Ayanna grabbed Luke by the arm, her fingers digging into his skin. "They've come," she whispered. Nayeli stood beside her, gripping her bow so tightly her knuckles turned white. Luke followed their gaze. Riders appeared on the ridgeline, dark silhouettes outlined by the rising sun. Black coats, wide-brimmed hats, rifles glinting like the teeth of a predator. The hunters who chased him had found their trail. The tribe erupted into motion, arrows pulled from quivers, spears lifted, horses saddled. This was no longer just a stranger found in the desert. This had become a battle for a home he had only recently begun to understand. Luke felt the old panic claw at his throat, his body remembering the helplessness of running, always running. But then he saw Nayeli and Ayanna preparing not just for war, but for survival, their bodies tense, their expressions carved from iron. Something inside him shifted. He could no longer be the man who simply survived. He had to choose who he was now. He stepped forward, ignoring the pain in his healing shoulder. The chief watched him with unreadable eyes as Luke took paint from a clay bowl and smeared black lines across his own chest. He didn't know what the symbols meant, but he knew what they meant to his soul. "They want me," he said, voice low but firm. "They came for me. I won't hide behind your walls. I'll face them." The chief's silence felt like a test. But before a verdict could fall, the sisters moved to Luke's sides, one on his left, one on his right. "You are not alone," Ayanna said. Niley lifted her chin with fierce certainty. "Between us you are protected." The first gunshot cracked like lightning splitting the sky. Horses screamed, warriors roared, arrows flew. Luke mounted a horse for the first time since fleeing death. And this time he rode toward danger, not away from it. Dust filled his lungs, fear hammered his chest. But behind that fear was something else, belonging. As he charged into the storm, with the two sisters flanking, him like wolves guarding their pack, he understood one truth more powerful than any bullet. Whatever happened next, his life was no longer his alone. It belonged to all of them, bound by war, by destiny, and by a promise whispered beneath the freezing desert stars.